There's a pretty important video going around on Instagram. I just tried recording a reaction to it and it broke my heart. We're gonna do a little screen share here and try to talk about it.
Say,
Okay.
travel sports are destroying American families. Period.
Okay.
Period. And you, as a well tuned in mom, are feeling the pressure. If you don't do this from these external coaches, if you don't do this, then your kid's not going to make this team. And if they don't make this team, there's no way they're going to get on this. And if they're not on this team, then how are they going to, right? You feel that. And
Right.
it makes sense. And you have a 10-year-old telling you, I love this. I love it. I love it. I want to do it. I want to do it. I want to do it. And then you got that feeling in your mom gut that like something's off. And your 10-year-old finds herself as the head of household. She decides what the family's doing on the weekend. She decides where the money's spent. She decides what y'all eat. And you see what I'm saying?
He's pretty locked in on that. Pretty locked in. I've got kids who do pretty good job in sports. We've got them high level coaching from the early years. And if I played baseball, I'd be able to coach my son. If I played tennis, I'd be able to coach my daughter. As a strength coach for a quarter of a century and being around coaches, I have a real good eye as to what is the difference between a good coach and a great coach. So there's a couple of heartbreaking truths to that. Most of the time in those younger travel teams, the coaches are not separated from the kids, meaning many of the travel coaches are often dads. And so you'll see dads playing their sons in the best positions, their son's favorite positions. And if you're not the father, then your kid ends up sitting or ends up playing positions that maybe don't get as much action. And it's pretty heartbreaking because many parents don't know the difference between good and great coaches. And I've seen some real heartbreaking things happen in all of these travel teams. And it's a big reason why, if anybody watching is in their 40s and older, tell me about your middle school and high school years. How many of your teammates needed Tommy John surgery, ACL repair, torn labrum, broken wrist, broken hand? How many of them rolled their
Time off.
ankles?
Now, here's some physiology. And this isn't just me trying to make social science arguments. This is coming directly from my close friends. And I've been at multiple universities and friends that are athletic trainers. And what
Okay.
they are screaming to a chorus of no one will listen to them, is that these kids who become really good at a young age, they show some proclivity to soccer or to baseball or to softball or whatever it is, and they just, their whole world shrinks overnight to that sport, and they get a batting coach and a pitching coach, they get on a travel team, they play fall ball, summer ball, spring ball.
Mm-hmm.
What they're finding is overuse, joint overuse injuries in 18-year-olds that are usually reserved for geriatric populations.
Hey, we have a 10-year-old with peroneal tendonitis right now. Grade 3.
That right. And so here's the way to avoid that is they have to take some time off from that sport.
Right.
And so, even with all the information out there, we're still pushing year-round sport with one sport. And so what's happening is every weekend, every other weekend, you're traveling and you're on an airplane and you're in a car, and vacations begin to get blended with practice and sports. And really, what's best for the kids is to play multiple sports. But travel has dismantled regular sports. Most towns don't have recreation baseball at the middle school level. Most towns don't have local teams anymore because the kids go to travel. Travel gets more experience, they get a little bit more playing time. They are obviously traveling more. And so now the normal weekend with mom and dad taking a vacation, doing this and that stuff has been pulled away. But I'll tell you what the most heartbreaking thing is. The toughest thing for me out of this was my son at a young age I don't know, 9, 10 years old, something like that. I watched him in a game not play at all. He sat in the dugout, and I remember the sun was beating down on that dugout. And I watched the coaches who had sons on the team strike out, slam their baseball down, stomp feet, throw a fit when they struck out or dropped the ball. They never missed an inning ever. If my son would strike out once or miss something, he was out for the rest of the game. But this one game, he sat the entire game, and he was a pretty good baseball player. And I'm not saying that because he's my son. And so on the ride home, I had to say, Ethan, you are going to have to work harder than everybody else just to play. Because on all these teams, I said, Daddy never played baseball. And I said, so your dad will never coach. And I said, let me explain this to you. Daddy's not in the dick sucking club. That's what I said to him. Must have been 10 years old. His jaw dropped. And I explained to him that because I'm not buddies and don't hang out with all these guys and I didn't grow up with them and they're not my best friends, now the work that you have to put in is even more. And he was okay with it. And he started learning to put in the work. But I also know what it's like to do all this traveling and being a strength coach for a quarter of a century and working in the college and private sector. Do you know how many kids compete in college from high school? 6 or 7% from high school will compete in college, and not at the D1 level. Okay. Most of them will go to the Division 3 level. In my experiences at the Division 1 level, every 2 to 4 weeks, there's a kid quitting the team, or they get removed from the team for academic reasons, or they're just not performing. And so by the time that college athlete is done with his or her sophomore year, in my experience, 50% of them have already quit. And so it's heartbreaking. Parents will spend almost every weekend traveling for these sports. And then when the kid gets to the end of high school, they don't even want to compete anymore. So they just spent all that childhood time traveling for sports. Does it hurt families? I've seen it hurt families. I've also seen it bring families together. Lots of time together on the weekends. We have traveled to states and places around our state that I've never even known about. And so it's been, in that respect, amazing. And the heartbreaking stuff is lessons you have to teach your kids about politics when your son or daughter is 8 years old.
And I'm saying this as a sports fanatic, as somebody who played what I would call the early origins of travel ball before it just became this high dollar business.
Hey, I've just paid several $1,000s to be on this team. And that coach is on his phone, or that coach said he was going to develop my son with this and that. And they don't, because now I'm in this. But if they want my son to get developed, I have to pay for private. And that's why at the underground, I've always said, we do what is best for the kid. So if that kid needs more speed, then in the group, he or she is getting more speed work. If in the group, he or she needs more bodybuilding, muscle building, hypertrophy, we do that. We don't start tacking it on unless it's a real, specific condition that the person needs one-on-ones. But for the parents out there who have not been involved in competitive sports, you need to look at, when your son or daughter is in travel sports, would that coach treat your son or daughter as they would their own child? I know this. If I was coaching baseball, I would not let my son play more, make mistakes more, and then somebody else has a different standard. And that's what we see in a lot of travel. So if you get into a travel team, It doesn't mean this is a cure-all, but the best thing to do is no parents are involved in that travel team. And if you're traveling, make it a family experience and don't get caught up in doing one sport year round. There's a reason why I've seen middle school kids break their elbow while pitching, because I look at the kid and he looks like he can't do one push-up. There's a reason why we're seeing excessive torn ACLs, torn labrums, girls tearing one ACL a year or two later, tearing the other ACL. Too much sport, not enough strength and conditioning, not enough athleticism because they don't play multiple sports. Because in America, we push, and people who are my age started businesses around year-round baseball training, year-round this, year-round that. The truth of the matter is that's not good for the body, and that's not good for the mind, and it's not good for the family.